Hi everyone, CraftyCrime here, and welcome back to my channel. So I'm on YouTube last night, as I always am, going to make my CSI Miami video public, because of course I forgot to schedule it. You should totally check that out, by the way, when the almighty algorithm recommends me this video. I spent a day with Criminologists by Anthony Padilla. Now the only thing my small pea brain associates with Anthony Padilla is this.
Oh my god, he on X Games mode.
But I checked out his channel and I see that he's been doing some really cool sit-down interview type videos lately, which aren't really my speed, but I respect it nonetheless. Anyways, I thought this would be a good opportunity to capitalize on the success of someone much better than me at this whole YouTube thing for my own benefit and react to this video, since I too am a criminologist. Now before we begin, let me clear up exactly what I mean by that for those of you who are new here. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Criminology and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, and I am finishing my Master's in Criminology like literally next week. I was also enrolled in a criminology PhD program, but decided to leave that for personal reasons. Now my area of criminology is legal psychology. As I mentioned in my What is Criminology Anyway short, which you should also totally check out, criminology is not just the study of criminal behavior. While my research specifically focused on eyewitness identifications, I've done projects in my lab involving jury decision-making, expert witness testimony, and wrongful convictions in general. Now, what I'm expecting from this video is definitely not that. Given what I've seen from Anthony's channel, I'm expecting more of the criminal behavior side of criminology here, specifically those who study things like serial killers or other types of violent crime, which is totally fine, and all criminology is valid and awesome in its own right. I just want to make my background here very clear because I am not claiming to be an expert in any area of criminology outside of my own. So with all that being said, let's get into the video.
We'll find out if these criminologists find their work entirely gratifying, or if they wish they'd never stepped into this line of work in the first place after their constant exposure to the absolute darkest side.
Okay, so this is going the way that I said I expected it to from the intro. So he is going towards the more, you know, like sadistic, cannibals, serial killers, all that kind of shock value stuff. That people expect criminologists to be studying, right? Which again is totally fine, and there's obviously a need for those types of things to be studied. But like I said, not all criminologists are going to be studying this type of thing. I don't study any of the actual criminal behavior itself at all. Criminology can be very exhausting work in any area of criminology, regardless of whether or not you're looking at violent crime. When I started in my research lab as an undergraduate research assistant and I learned about wrongful convictions and just how prevalent they were, I would have days where I would just break down crying in research because it was just so overwhelming how terrible it was. So I do agree that it's not necessarily the easiest field to be in, because unfortunately we have a criminal justice system that is not so just.
Can you define what a criminologist does?
Criminology is the study of criminals and criminal behavior. You're looking for patterns, you're looking for correlations, and you're looking at the sociology and also the psychology of crime to hopefully prevent crime in the future.
I would say that Laura, the first woman, did have the most accurate definition of criminology. She is right that it's definitely closely intertwined with sociology and psychology, and it's also not just the study of criminal behavior, but rather crime in general. Prevention is, of course, a major goal of criminology, and that is a field in and of itself.
What I seek to do is try to debunk many stereotypes and misinformation that are out there in the world about crime and murder.
I like how Scott mentioned that he specifically focuses on debunking some of the things that we hear about crime, which is obviously my goal with this channel, so it's nice to see that.
For me, it's about research, it's about interviewing serial killers, going through interview tapes and going through body language and non-verbal and verbal cues.
Now, Amanda, the second woman, is what I would mostly consider to be the type of criminology that people come into this video expecting, right? Especially if they are exposed to crime media like Criminal Minds or CSI like we've been seeing on this channel. I am a bit discouraged at the fact that she mentioned that one of the things that she really focuses on is like nonverbal cues. As I mentioned in the first CSI video when we were talking about lie detection, People are not very good at detecting lies, and one of the main ways we do that is through nonverbal behavior. So we have these wrong assumptions that the way that someone is behaving has to be correlated to some type of behavior or thought otherwise outside of that room, right? So that's kind of where my mind is going with her idea of behavioral interviewing. It's just a little less based in science and evidence than some of the other areas of criminology. But I don't doubt that she is also doing good work. That's just my general observation so far. So I wish Anthony had provided last names. I understand if he's doing that out of privacy, but I'm assuming that these are published researchers who make their work public. So I do wish some last names had been provided so I could do a bit of my own research about who these people actually are.
Everybody knows me for obviously the Toolbox Killers.
Okay, so since she did mention the Toolbox Killers, I am now positive that the person he's speaking to is Laura Brand. Looking at her Instagram here, which is Siren of San Quentin, I see that she is doing training to be a private investigator in California. She has a production company. I do see that she only holds a bachelor's, which nothing against that. I just would say that most people who call themselves criminologists do have some level of advanced education, but that's fine. It also does look like that she presents at some conferences such as the Forensic Psychology Symposium, which is good. I also see that she has a website, which is dead. I can't find any publications under her name, nor can I find where she achieved her education from. I would just like a little bit more transparency as to who the people Anthony are interviewing is before they, start publicly promoting information on his channel. It seems like he has a large team who puts together these episodes, so I'm sure they did their own vetting.
The content on those tapes, the sounds on those tapes were so haunting. It's caused people to take their own lives.
Once you hear something or see something like that, there's no going back.
Now, unfortunately, criminology is one of those fields where vicarious trauma is quite common. Not just criminology in general, but everyone who is involved in a crime, whether that's police or fire rescue or the detectives, they see and hear some very difficult things. The rates of post-traumatic stress disorder are astronomically high compared to the average population. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. And quite frankly, the mental health resources can be quite lacking at times, especially for academic criminologists who are, more so removed from the scene. So it's kind of thought like, how can you be struggling with this level of vicarious trauma if you're not actually the person who went out there and saw it? It can be very, very hard to do it. Whether or not you are watching it through a computer screen or reading an article about it or writing a paper, or whether you're actually sitting there in jail talking to the person themselves.
I build that real authentic trust and rapport, so once I'm in a cage with them, it's friendly.
So rapport building is an extremely important part of our job. More so obviously on the practitioner side if you're actually involved in that, but rapport building is really the way that you're going to be able to get the most information. And that's kind of what we're moving towards nowadays, especially with say like interrogation tactics, the whole brute force, like I am not your friend type thing. Not the most effective way to be able to get true confessions while also minimizing false confessions.
I've actually gotten a couple confessions from using dark humor.
Do you think that's because it makes these heinous acts seem a little bit more light because you're able to joke about it?
So this is just anecdotal, but I will say that pretty much everyone who is in criminology that I know is amazing at using dark humor. We all definitely use it as a coping mechanism because, again, some of the things that people study can be really hard. So sometimes it's easier to be light about it.
Not all psychopaths become serial killers, and not all serial killers are psychopaths. Psychopathy is innate, that you were born with a different brain that functions differently. But even then, something has to happen. Something has to trigger it.
Scott, spitting facts right there. Big fan of Scott. I know he said that his main area is to dispel rumors, and that's definitely what he's doing there. Not all psychopaths are serial killers. Not all serial killers are psychopaths. It is true that they have this different makeup of the brain, right? But you need to have something happen in order to make that true. So you can't rely on just biological theory, which is where biosocial theory in criminology has responded, because unless you have those biological factors interacting with the environment in some way, a lot of those biological factors can just remain innate, especially with certain genes. So the MAOA gene, or the so-called warrior gene, you need that gene X environment interaction in order for that to actually occur.
Why do you think it is that people are so fascinated by serial killers?
We want to get close to it. We want to understand it. We want to try to wrap our minds around it, but we want to do it in a very safe environment. So these TV shows allow us to do that.
Now, again, I'm not really going to postulate onto the reasons as to why people love true crime, but the facts do exist that people love true crime. And as Scott says, it's being explored in a space that is safe, right? Like, you are removed from it. So it gives people an outlet or a way to explore these things that they are curious about. Because humans just naturally want to understand the things that they think are unthinkable. By consuming this media where people try to explain it in a way that the average person would be able to accept as truth or fact, it's calming, it's reassuring in a sense.
There's also that side, that empathetic side of trying to understand what it would really feel like to be so helpless in such an unimaginable, distressing way.
Certain individuals are drawn to this true crime programming and serial killer programming because they identify with the victim.
And I do actually like Anthony's point that he made about empathy and empathizing. You definitely do need a lot of empathy to be a criminologist. And I can definitely see his angle of where he's coming from, of people who are empathizing with the victims rather than the killers themselves, and that is why they find that interest.
You tend to feel a lot of empathy for the victims and those affected by all this. Was it always that way?
It made me realise of that butterfly effect of someone's death, because though we talk about the victims being killed, it's the others around them, it's their families, it's their partners, it's their children who have to continue with that grieving process.
And it is really important at the end of the day to take in the victim and their family's wants. And it's become more common in courts lately to allow victim impact statements for the juries to hear that, rather than making presumptions based on what they think they would want in that situation, or what justice would look like to them, the juror, that is. So by having the victim's family be able to put their wants out there and work towards a more restorative justice system, that's an important step, I think, in moving forward towards a more just justice system.
Check out my work on Twitter.
Now that I have Scott's information, it's obvious to me that he is the most qualified of the criminologists here. He has a master's in criminal justice as well as a PhD in sociology with a concentration in criminology. He was a tenured professor of criminology for over 10 years. And I can also see here that he has a published study on the legal and non-legal factors associated with exoneration for wrongful conviction, particularly DNA evidence, which has really been a boon for exonerations and wrongful convictions. Without DNA evidence, we wouldn't have had over 3,000 people exonerated, and this is published in an actual journal. Overall, I would say he is the most like what I would consider to be a criminologist coming from the academic side of things, whereas the other two women who were featured are more so what the public would perceive to be a criminologist. Let's move it back to the other angle for some final thoughts, because I have a lot. Again, I want to preface this by saying that I am not an expert in this area at all. It is not related to my area of research. I am a criminologist, but I do not study serial killers or really criminal behavior in general. Let's start with what I liked about this video. I like that Anthony is bringing awareness to criminology. Not a lot of people really know about criminology, so it was really cool to scroll through the comments and see people who were saying that they're currently getting a degree in criminology, or this has inspired them to look into criminology more, which I think it's awesome. I see it even in my own students throughout the years, that they become more and more interested and more knowledgeable before they even step foot in an intro to criminal justice class, which I think can be attributed to this increase in pop culture phenomena and social media and YouTubers like Anthony who are promoting information about it. And the other thing I really liked is Scott. What I didn't like about it though was exactly what was presented within it. And again, this really, like, I do not know how to stress this enough, that I am not trying to give like a harsh criticism or say that any of the information that was presented was wrong or inaccurate or discredit any of the people who were involved in the making of this video. But I do wish that there had been more perspectives like Scott's of an academic criminologist, or even someone who just doesn't study pure criminal behavior. But the two women felt more like what I was expecting out of this, right? Like the serial killers, the shock value, the people who are actually going in and interviewing the serial killers, which again is great information and it needs to be done, and I could never do the work that they do. I just would have liked to see more perspectives involved. Or maybe even a follow-up video on this that takes criminologists who are involved in other areas of criminology, maybe prevention science or juvenile justice or rehabilitation or incarceration reform or post-trial proceedings or trial proceedings. There's just so many areas of criminology that you can't accurately fit it into one video. So I respect the fact that he chose people who cater to his audience and what it is that people want to see. And again, none of the information presented in the video was necessarily inaccurate or wrong. It's just not as scientific or evidence-based as I personally like to make my own work. But we serve different audiences in that he actually has one and I don't. So overall, it was a good video. I just would have liked to see a little bit less of the sensational aspects and a little bit more of the scientific aspects. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all again. Bye!